Hello everybody, this is ManuS and welcome to another Legends of Runeterra deck tech here on my channel. It's finally time to talk about the Jinx Draven Discard Aggro that I have been having a ton of success lately. If you're following me on social media or watching my stream, you probably already know what I'm talking about, but now I'm going to give you the full rundown, breakdown of the deck and the card choices, how it works, and of course show it in action, play some in-depth commentary games in top 100 of Ladder to show you how to pilot it and what to pay attention to. Alright, let's take a look. So this is the deck list. I actually messed around with this deck while climbing to Master a bunch, both my own versions as well as Josh Utter-Layton's version that he used on his way to Master as one of the decks he had success with. But let's dive into the card choices. So recently I just felt like I learned a bunch more about aggro decks and how I want them to play, how I want to build them in order to succeed in a format and be strong. And that's how I went back to this and implemented a couple of things that I learned that I will talk about now. So first off, let's talk about the units. We have 6 1-drops, we have 3 Precious Pet and Rearguard. Rearguard is the best 1-drop here, and Pet is the second best. I think Pet is better than Academic, Draven's biggest fan, and Saboteur. I think the order is probably something like Saboteur, Academic, Draven's biggest fan. I think Draven's biggest fan is very bad. I don't think Draven is good or important enough to skip a draw step to get him, and to put a bad 2-1 in our deck to get him. So I don't even keep Draven in my opening hand a lot of the time. So yeah, Draven's biggest fan, just not a good card. Way too many 1-1s and stuff that just eat him for free, and he just underwhelming. Academic is kind of solid, but the problem is when you have the attack token, she's a 1-2, which is really frustrating. Otherwise, being 2 health is actually really good because of Veils and stuff like that. And Saboteur is nice if the opponent doesn't have a blocker, but as soon as they do, it suffers from the same issues as Draven's biggest fan, while Precious Pet and Rearguard are both good against 1-1s in a way. Rearguard, they can only jump, and Pet they cannot interact with at all, but Pet has the downside of dying to stuff like Veil, which is annoying, but you need more 1-drops. Ideally, I think an aggro deck usually wants 9 1-drops in this game. But in this deck, you can kind of get away with less because you have Rummage and you want and need Rummage, and that's kind of your 1 mana play 7 to 9. So if you don't have a 1-drop, you still have the chance to have a Rummage or a Jury Rig to make use of that mana. And there's also not really room to fit more 1-drops. If I could, I would still play more 1-drops, but it's not that important because of making use of the turn 1 float mana with Rummage in cases that happens, especially if you don't have an attack token. Then 2-drops, the primary 2-drops are Rookie and House Spider. Rookie just because Rookie is an insane card and just super good, 4 health is so good, and being pseudo unblockable and everything, and playing well with our pump is just amazing. House Spider actually is pretty good for multiple reasons. We have Vision, so you can go House Spider into Draven, discard Vision, buff your whole board. That is a super powerful swing, and House Spider makes particular good use of this. Rookie to an extent too. The other thing is Brothers Bond once again plays well with House Spider, giving you more bodies to work with. And another big one is we have crowd favorites, so we need enough bodies to get our crowd favorites big. So it's basically primarily Vision and crowd favorite are the reason why House Spider is good. Also, it's good against spot removal stuff from controlling decks. Better than other options like Grenadier, which just dies to everything. Grenadier is a good secondary 2-drop if you're on the reach burn plan where you just don't really care about combat, and just any combat damage that you get in just makes your job a lot easier, but it's not necessary. And Grenadier even often blocks on defense, trades, and deals 2 damage. That's just not what we want here. So yeah, House Spider was one of the puzzle pieces that kind of fell into place recently for me. And then we have the Chompers, which are not really 2s. Usually you just discard them to something. So they're 0 cost, often burst speed. O2 Challengers, which is really good and generates a lot of tempo for the deck, and plays once again well with Bond, Vision, and Battlecaster. Battlecaster is the third and sort of like tertiary 2-drop. It's not the 2-drop you usually want on 2, but it's a 2-drop that is great on 3 with another 1-cost play, and just really good with your like going wide. And another reason why House Spider is a good 2-drop, because Battlecaster makes House Spider better. It also makes Jury Rig and Trumpers that you often get into play for free a lot more powerful, and also allows Trumpers to like chomp away at like 1/1s for free, killing them and then staying behind as an 0/1 to be able to challenge something bigger for 1 turn again. Initially I had 1 Battlecaster. That's basically the only change that I made since I built the deck, is that I added a second Battlecaster to make the deck play a bit smoother by cutting the 3rd Experimenter, which is powerful but also a bit clunky, and also the more you have, the more likely you are to draw multiples, where the second one is just blank and gets discarded with your other Experimenter, unless you discard it to something else first, like a Rummage or a Draven Axe or something. Then we have Draven as our only 3-drop. We don't need that many 3-drops since we have a lot of 1 and 2-cost cards, so a lot of the time we can just go like 1-cost, 2-cost card on 3 instead of Draven. Or we just like go 1-cost and like Brothers Bond if we don't have a 2-cost unit or something like that. There are a lot of sequences where you don't need an actual 3. But Draven is still pretty good on 3, especially if you have a tech token, especially because in this deck he's effectively a 4/3, since you can use the X pretty aggressively and freely, thanks to like Trumpers and Rigs. So a lot of the time you play Draven on 3, discard one of the 9 cards, and Draven is effectively a 4/3 for 3, which is pretty good with quick attack. Crowd Favorite is one of the big technologies in this list, basically. And yeah, shout out to Josh Utterlayton, aka Runeterra, for this one. That's one of the things that he had in his initial list on his Master's Climb back then. And I was initially skeptical because we have like 3 3-drops, but suddenly we have like 6 4-cost units, and it's weirdly clunky for an aggressive deck on paper. But yeah, first of all, Crowd Favorite is one of like the top 3 premium Noxus cards. Like Rearguard, Brothers Bond, and Crowd Favorite are like, in my opinion, the 3 best aggressive Noxus cards, and Crowd Favorite might even be the best of the 3 before Brothers Bond. It's like close between Brothers Bond and Crowd Favorite being the best, I think. So yeah, Crowd Favorite, really powerful. It's also our actual 4-drop. Jinx is not really a 4-drop. A lot of the time you don't want to or can't afford to play Jinx on 4 because the opponent just kills her because you can't level her. So you want to make sure that if she comes down, you're either against an opponent that can't kill her, or in a matchup or a situation where you don't need her, or if you can level her when you play her, like for example having a Rummage with 1 mana and 3 cards total, Rummage plus 2 others, to deny stuff like Grasp, Get Excited, all that stuff. So Jinx is more of a like turn 5 play or like last play of your hand sort of deal. So she's not actually a turn 4 play, so she just costs 4, but is more like the curve topper of the deck together with the Experimenters. So yeah, this plays a lot better, and like Crowd Favorite is so important and so powerful. It's one of the big things that makes this deck good and successful. This deck is at its core like a board aggro deck, like as opposed to like the burn aggro deck that just tries to like go super low, cheese in some damage, and then burn them out. This is just trying to like generate tempo, get board position, and run away with the game by like getting board control, board advantage, basically. And the deck does that really, really well in various ways, with like the free cheap bodies added, the free pump, the efficient pump from Bond that is permanent, and just yeah, challenging for free and stuff like that, and also generating a lot of card advantage with Rummage, especially like even if you Rummage like a random card plus a Draven X, you're already basically turning Rummage into draw 2, discard 1, which is super good. And then Jinx and Experimenter are like your additional grind tools that let you win from so many spots and make matchups that are traditionally challenging or would be even bad for aggressive decks to like very winnable or even slightly favorable matchups like Demacia mid-range decks, for example. Sometimes you can just sit back on your Jinx, especially if you force them with aggression earlier to use like their single combats or challengers. You just sometimes get a Jinx and they can't really do much about your Jinx. You just sit there with your Jinx and rocket them out. Like I just had a game earlier where I did that. Like I just jump blocked against the Draven, Garen plus some other dude, and like rocketed out the opponent over 3 turns when he clearly represented a judgment that would have otherwise just blown up my board and denied me the win. And this way I just killed him with like 2 or 3 rockets from, I think 3 rockets from like 11 over 3 turns. So yeah, play cautiously with your Jinx. Also, it is nice that Jinx and Draven provide the deck with free interaction when you already have a copy in play, because of both of their spells are very solid removal combat interaction that can protect you from stuff like Judgment, deny barrier blocks on quick draw units by popping the barrier and stuff like that. And also, of course, helping them level or just helping you kill the opponent. Like there are sometimes games where you just have 2 Jinx, play 1, and get excited the opponent for lethal and stuff like that. And then we have 2 Augmented Experimenter. Like I said, I had 3, but 6 is still pretty clunky. Multiples are awkward, and I wanted a bit smoother curve, and Battlecaster is really nice in the deck. So I eventually decided to cut the 3rd for the 2nd Battlecaster, and I've been very happy with that change. And that's the only change that I made since I built this list. And I'm pretty much convinced by now that this list is perfect, and I don't think there is anything I would change anymore. I kept questioning the list really hard all the time, and talked with some other people about the options, and the conclusion that I kept coming to is basically that there's nothing you can change. Like, sure, 6 4-cost cards seems a lot, but you can't cut a Jinx because she's so powerful, and you can't really cut a favorite because he's also so good and so powerful, and also our go-to turn 4 play Jinx isn't. So we really want to have like 3 good proactive turn 4 plays, not like 2 and then have to run out our Jinx sometimes when we really don't want to. So yeah, there's just no wiggle room anymore. I think this list is good exactly as it is. One note that people keep bringing up is Mystic Shot, Get Excited. Like, don't play these cards in this deck. I think they're both really bad. Mystic Shot is super underwhelming. It's 2 damage for 2 mana. It really doesn't do anything. Removal is not even good in aggressive decks in this game because of how the priority system works. So what will happen is you play a removal to kill a blocker. They get priority before you can attack. Just play another unit. You accomplished 0. While at least playing a lot of our units here actually gets us a leg up. Like, if we play a House Spider, we get 2 bodies. They play 1 blocker usually. So we got 1 additional attacker. If it's a rookie, the same. Battlecaster, the same. Like, most of our units are worth more than 1 action or 1 body of impact, while a lot of decks in this game just play 1 body that's like worth the impact of 1 body, and doesn't help them on defense as well as our additional unit helps on offense. And Get Excited is kind of the same. Like, Get Excited is a bit better than Mystic Shot, but it also has the issue of further taxing like discard stuff and being a bit clunky and still being bad as removal. And the deck is, like I said, a board aggro deck, so the burn really doesn't do that much. Like in games like Magic, you play like burn spells in aggressive decks because they are removal and they are a way to close out the game, and they're actually good as removal in that game. In this game, they're really bad as removal, so you would only play them for the situations where they close out the game. But if your deck is a board aggro deck and not a burn deck like the burn aggro decks, that just doesn't come up that often, and every time that doesn't happen, you have a bad card in your hand and in your deck, and that's really not what you want. And you still sometimes get excited from Jinx when it's useful, so yeah, just don't play Mystic Shot or Get Excited. They're really not what the deck wants, and they are pretty bad. Counts for any other removal, really. Like, if there are further cards that you're wondering, maybe ask in the comments and I try to explain it. Like, I can't go over all the cards that could theoretically go in a deck like this, because they're actually a lot, and I tried to explain as well as possible why exactly those cards and no other cards. Like, we only want so many and can run so many 2-drops, and these are the best 2-drops for the reasons mentioned, and so on and so forth. So yeah, then we just have the spells. Basically, we have the 9 free discard cards to fuel our tempo and rummage card advantage. I initially thought rummage might be cuttable, also because it's sometimes awkward if you like have a Jinx out and you have 0 cards, and you draw like a Rummage and another card, and then you can't make a Rocket, which is annoying. But aside from those spots, Rummage is just amazing. It's so much card advantage. It also allows you to play your Chompers at burst speed and your Visions for like effectively 0 power, which is super huge. Basically, Vision is worth a card and like 2 mana, but costs 3, so it's like 1 mana overcosted. Chompers worth maybe 1 mana and close to a card, probably. And like Jury Rig is like worth half a card and half a mana. It's like the worst of the 3. But it's still important because it makes Rummage better, it makes Draven better, and it makes Favorite better because it allows you to go Draven on 3, burst speed Rig into Favorite, for example. Or even sometimes what comes up is you play something on 4, and then on your turn 5, before you attack, you can just hardcast Jury Rig into Favorite with 1 action. So it allows you to deploy 2 bodies and make your Favorite one bigger without giving the opponent 2 actions, which is super important. Like this deck gets to cheat so much on mana and on actions with the burst speed. That is why it's so powerful and why it generates so much tempo, because there's this weird thing where like in this game, cheating on actions also affects tempo the same way as cheating on mana would. And this deck gets to cheat on actions quite a bunch, which is huge. So yeah, this is the deck. It's super good. Like the only like pronounced bad matchup from what I found actually is Elusives. Like the Elusives matchup seems really bad. I think I'm like 2-4 or 2-5 against it or something, or maybe even 2-5 or 2-6. Like I won 2 times against it that I know for sure, and lost a handful of times against it that I faced it, probably at least 4 or 5 times. Everything else seemed at least either very favorable and like hard to lose in terms of the good matchups, or some other matchups that seem around the 50% mark that could either be slightly favorable or like 45, maybe 40% some cases, and I haven't like played them enough and repetitively enough to have like a strong feeling. Like for example, Karma SI control isn't something that is bad, but I'm not sure how good it is. Like it could be 45%, it could also be like 55 or 60%, because I have been doing quite well against it, but it's one of the decks that I had lost games to, for example, unlike a fair share of other decks that I basically haven't lost games to, because it feels really, really hard to lose games to them, or like maybe lost one where I had a really bad draw and they had a really good draw, and it was super close and I barely lost or something. So, like for example, Ezreal, like the Ezreal matchup is really, really good. Like most control matchups actually are really, really good. Like if they are Shadow Isles based control, they are most likely to have a chance against you. The control deck that felt the worst to me of the control matchups I think that I played probably has been this weird championless Shadow Isles PNZ control with Corinas. That's a deck that I faced 2 or 3 times, and I think I lost 2 out of the 3 times or something, and it felt pretty rough because they have so much removal and life gain, because PNZ gives you a good early removal and Shadow Isles gives you good mid and late game removal, so they basically just constantly kill all your stuff and gain a decent amount of health, so they're pretty good at like keeping the board in control and keeping it from escalating and snowballing, which is something that a lot of other decks can't. Like they either like the Shadow Isles late game part, or they miss the like early part removal. Like the Karma SI control, for example, has a really poor early game. So unless your draw lines up really well into like their Veil and they can catch up, they're just so far behind at this point that they basically cannot catch up anymore and can't win, especially if they don't play like Scorched Deathmark. Like the Scorched Deathmark version is notably better against this than the non-Scorched Deathmark version. I think the non-Scorched Deathmark version is probably like, it has to be favorable, like 55-60% at least, I would guess. And yeah, so yeah, the deck is really well positioned and really, really powerful. Probably the best aggro deck in the game right now, and might be one of the tier 1 decks that has taken a while to be figured out. Like last time I played it during my Master's climb a bunch, it was one of the decks that I liked better and felt better, and I had been winning when most other decks hadn't been winning for me, but it didn't feel like great back then. And now it like really clicked and things came together, and it probably also helps with the metagame. But the deck is even good against like traditionally bad matchups for aggro decks, like Fearsome, a mid-range deck. Like this is a really good matchup. I usually don't lose to that deck. And even like the Demacia mid-range decks, which are some of the best anti-aggro decks, are very winnable. I think the Rekindler Garen might be unfavorable, but it still feels very winnable, in part due to like Experimenter, Jinx, and Crowd Favorite being really good against mid-range decks. But it's very possible that that matchup is like 45 or 40% or something, but probably not much worse. But it's also possible that it's actually like 55 to 60, because I really can't tell. I have had games where I really like won pretty hard, and games where I like got kind of like, yeah, they stabilized and just kind of dominated me and ground me to dust. So it's kind of hard to say how often that happens. So yeah, and the like more aggressive Demacia decks, like the Z Demacia mid-range aggressive decks, have felt notably better than the Rekindler Garen deck, because Garen Rekindler top end is kind of what allows them to take over the game, where these other decks just are too fragile and can't really stabilize well enough against you, and just kind of get overpowered by what we are doing in that stage of the game. So yeah, deck is super impressive. It's also super fun. Jinx and Draven have the best voice lines ever, and the deck is really cool to play. There are a lot of subtleties and plays you can make, and aggro is a lot harder to play than people think, especially against reactive decks, against control decks, where a lot of their gameplay is in their hands, and you have to play around all these unknown cards that they may or may not have in their hand, while they mostly have to play against what you already showed them on the board, making it easier for them than for you. But yeah, deck's great, and I'll show it in action in top 100 Masters. I dropped to like 94 right now. Actually, my win rate is almost the same as when I posted, but I played like 15 games since then, since my tweet. And my overall win rate went from like 72.6 or something to like 71.8, because I think I lost like one more game than usual, because I had a bit of a rough luck in those 15 games. And suddenly I went from like, yeah, rank 15 to 94 with like a 70% win rate, which is pretty sad. But if your matchmaking is poor enough, like I was rank 16, I think, and lost 2 games and dropped to like 41 and then 99, which is just ridiculous. Like I just had the poorest pairing. I think one loss was against some diamond guy that played really poorly, but my draw was so horrible that I redrew in like into the worst possible hand. I think that happened to me like 2 or 3 times over like the 110 games that I played for now currently. But yeah, deck has still like 72 to 73% win rate over 110 games, which is pretty insane. And now we're gonna jump into some games, but before we do, you know the drill. Hit the subscribe button down below. Leave a like if you enjoy the content. Turn on the notification icon for more content in the future, of course. And if you want to support, make sure liking, commenting, and so on, everything helps the algorithm to get the video to in front of as many people as possible. And in general, please watch YouTube without adblock, or with YouTube white listed on your adblock, not just my content. Just in general, every content creator will be grateful for you sitting through the ads to support the free content that everyone in YouTube is putting out. And that's a great and free way to support every content creator on here. All right, that's it again for this time. I'll see you in a moment with game number 1. Stay tuned.